this is Governor Bobber. I like good day, doctors.
George Allen here. Good day, doctors.
Good Friday evening, everyone. Elections are sort of over. They're still counting the votes, and I think they're bringing in an expert in Arizona to count votes. Tom, we got some footage of him. Let me share that. Let's start with that, actually, of the Arizona count.
Decide the count, and it's time to answer that fascinating question: what is the Sesame Street number of the day? Let's count the bats and find out. That's one bat. Two bats. Three fabulous flyers.
Yeah, see, they brought in an expert to count the votes there in Arizona. I think it's hilarious. And I know we say that we make fun, but honestly, it has become a mockery. I hate to keep using the French as an example, but how is it that the French can have elections, everybody votes, and they have everything done in a day? Florida has more people in Florida than Nevada. Florida got done election night counting. Nevada's still counting also. Why is it so hard to count? It's a lot of these places are becoming jokes pretty much about. And I really think this whole mail-in vote really is like, we don't know the results on election night. It's election night, not election week or month. Like, as you recall, during the primary, we didn't know who won the Democrat primary in Montgomery County for county executive for a month. And if we would not do dumb things like, having these mail-in votes, and I don't see what benefit there is, frankly, to mail-in voting. Granted, it's here to stay, so we just have to adjust and fight them on it, so to speak. On the mail-in vote, I don't think there's much we can do to get around it. But I think that's something that the Republican Party is going to have to make adjustments that we kind of play the long game and learn. I mean, we do that. I mean, we've learned how to deal with early voting. We've had early voting since 2014, I think, was the first year we had early voting, or 2012. I'm sure one of our brilliant viewers will let us know when. But it's one of those fun things, where you need to adjust and figure that sort of stuff out.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you know, the rules on voting are set by each state, right? There is no national voter law, that says everybody has to vote this way.
And we don't want that, and we do not want a national voter law. I think what we need to do is elect Republican governors, Republican attorney generals around the country, and these Republican controlled legislators, we need to basically just pass laws on that. And I think we just lost Don. He needs to, I think, reset. He'll be back joining us soon. But I think, Don, are you back?
I'm going to try.
Yeah. I think if you log out and come back in, that might work.
Okay.
It says you got a weak signal. But at the end of the day, Republicans need to adjust on playing the long game with dealing with early voting and all this other fun stuff.
I have no idea what just happened there.
I don't know. It's basically, I think it's a demo.
I have now switched to Wi-Fi. I was actually on, direct.
Hardwired.
Yeah, I was hardwired. I don't know what happened. So that should
never
happen.
I think it's the Democrats fooling around with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, they're trying to prevent me from getting my say. But as you were saying, I mean, we don't want, a national law. I mean, this is what the Democrats want, right? The Democrats want this, and the state should determine how the
Yes.
voters vote. However,
Exactly.
what we have learned, you mentioned Florida. What we have learned is that there are wide disparities. Florida has a system in place that they have been able to really handle everything from early voting to mail in voting, all of these kinds of things, and get a very quick turnaround in voting. I mean, one of the problems with Maryland, too, before was just that, the pre processing. Now, I know there are a lot of conservatives that don't like, the pre counting of these things, but in reality, we're getting so many, mail-in ballots and drop-off ballots that if you want to get things turned around fairly quickly, you have got to allow them to start counting those ballots at least, when election day hits or something,
Yep.
you know,
Absolutely.
and not when the polls close. Uh, but one of the problems too, I mean, Dwight, we're going through this again. We've been going through this for two, maybe three election cycles or more.
Yeah.
California is a horrible mess. I mean,
Yes.
they're counting votes very slowly, and it may be just like we had in the past. It could be weeks before we really know the final outcome of what's happening in California. That is California's a complete mess. You would think that after all these cycles of these problems, they would try to remedy that and fix it, but they don't.
Hmm.
Arizona and Nevada, I mean, they have their own issues, but
And
one
Arizona is the one that I'm kind of feel like why is it so difficult for Arizona? Arizona has a great governor in Doug Ducey, and why is it taking them so long, frankly? And Arizona had this problem 2 years ago in the presidentials. And I think I think what these states need to do, is if you're going to do mail in votes, fine, do your mail in votes. But you gotta say, if we don't have them by election day, they don't count. I mean, California, what is it, Nevada that has the quirky law that says they have until next Tuesday or something like that to have
I
their
think
ballots show up?
I think they have to be in by tomorrow because today was a
Oh, tomorrow.
holiday.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's like, in what universe should it be okay for ballots to arrive in essence, 3 4 days after the election to be
Yes.
valid? I mean, Arizona, they have to be in by 7 p.m. on election night, which is halfway decent. I was thinking this morning, I mean,
Hmm.
that maybe one of the things that the states need to do, since they're struggling so much with this thing, is like, okay, you want to do mail in, then the same rules apply to, say, deadlines apply to early voting. The mail in period ends when early voting ends, because early voting ends a few days, could end up to a week before or a few days
Hmm.
before election day. If they had that, then they'd have everything they need by election day, and then they can start counting on election night or whatever and do
Hmm.
that. This waiting period of allowing them to come in at this point, it it was fine when we used to have the old absentee ballot situation where you had to basically have a reason to vote
Yep.
that way, and there were very few absentee ballots that ever showed up in any one state, but they're
Yes. Hmm.
flooding in. People are dropping stuff off, at these drop off locations.
Hmm.
So these election offices, they're getting flooded and overwhelmed with
Hmm.
massive amounts of ballots coming in a very short period of time,
Yep.
and it just seems untenable. They're going to I would say, look at what Florida's done and try to emulate Florida, or
Yeah.
find another solution, like cut off the mail in earlier. Do something. The drop off should be cut off sooner or something like this. If you want to vote, and you want to wait till the last minute, then you go in person. If you want to vote by mail or you want to vote early voting, then you have a different deadline. And I think that makes it a little bit easier in these bigger states. If they don't want to exactly follow Florida's line,
Hmm.
these there's no doubt that a lot of these laws seem to me to be fashioned, to try to help the Democrats.
Hmm.
They tend to benefit by a lot of these changes.
Yep.
But I don't, it's just really ridiculous in this day and age. I mean, we have all this technology. We had better reporting, I think, as you alluded to earlier. We had better
Hmm.
reporting before all this technology arrived. than we do now. You know.
And I think I've got no faith in pollsters at all.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, remember 2012, Mitt Romney was going to win, and boy, that was like a kind of a real, like someone threw a bucket of cold water on you, ice cold water. It was like the ice bucket challenge before the ice bucket challenge,
Yeah, well,
frankly.
yeah, the pollsters are having problems. I mean, they're trying now. They have to rely mostly on cell phone to try to get a hold of people.
Yep.
I do think that really ever since Trump started, he first started his campaign, that it changed, the likely voters, registered voters on the Republican side who didn't want to admit they were going to vote for, Trump. And you still have that effect, with people who are Trump aligned that were running, and people
Hmm.
supporting them, that they weren't necessarily going to tell pollsters the honest truth. Uh, I have Dan Gaynor, who recently left the Media Research Center after being there for a number of years.
Yep.
He
Hmm.
sent me a message via Twitter, direct message, and he asked me about Utah because Molly Hemingway, put this thing up from the Federalist about these odd Deseret News polls that seem to favor, McMullen's chances in
Hmm.
Utah against Mike Lee and making him seem to be very close races. So I went back and looked at this because I hadn't paid a lot of attention to the race, but I was in Utah in early October, and I did see a
Hmm.
number of McMullen signs, but I never got the feeling while I was in Utah that there was any real danger that people were going to abandon Mike Lee for an Evan McMullen.
Yeah.
That there wasn't, that just doesn't seem to be any reason. It's a heavily Republican state, and nothing. Lee hasn't done
It's like,
anything.
yeah, it's kind of like, like if you saw the early results, Beto O'Rourke was up in Texas, right? The early results, I think they called it for.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean
go.
so the Deseret News, they partnered with the Hinckley Institute, which is kind of a moderate at best, organization in Utah doing
Yeah, I
of
mean, what can you say about
politics.
an organization that's named after a would-be assassin who tried to murder President Reagan?
Well, yeah, if that was only the case in Utah, yeah, there are other Hinckleys that are more famous in Utah for many many
Yes, I
reasons.
know
But
that.
as the Federalist was pointing out, the polls that the Deseret News and Hinckley were putting out was 3 to 5 points for, basically separating McMullen and Lee for the polls they ran. Uh,
Hmm.
Other polls out there showed a wider, margin for Lee, and Lee won by a very comfortable margin. And so, Dan was kind of like, you know, since you're LDS, what do you take of this? I said, you know, I found an article that talked about the polling disparity and the methodology for one thing, and I just said, and I reiterated to him what I just told you, is just that, if you're on the ground in Utah, you didn't get that
Hmm.
feeling. I mean, when you're surveying 800 voters and you have these, you really, you're not really, experienced on doing something like this, or you use a bad database, you're going to get numbers that are way off. So they were way, way off. But this is part and parcel of what we saw during this election. Once again,
Hmm.
pollsters, they've been suffering for a number of cycles, and it's not getting any better. They are
No,
struggling in this environment to try to
they
pinpoint how.
have not. Honestly, I don't think they've gotten an election right since 2004. As you know, they got that one wrong. Remember 2004? All the Democrats thought John Kerry was going to win.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, that was so much fun.
yeah, there's always going to be polls that are wrong, but when you have the majority of them, especially ones that had been right for so long, that have been good,
Hmm.
you have to begin to wonder exactly what's going on here with the
Yep.
methodology.
Hmm.
What are the voters saying? Can you trust the voters to answer honestly anymore? Um, I don't know. I mean, I think this is we need some polls to get some kind of a feel for things,
Hmm.
but I really don't have a lot of faith in polls when I see them. I
No.
think, in the end, you just have to wait for election night and just start seeing the numbers. Now, I do want to say to people out there that, there are people who get, we still have a lot of election conspiracy theorists out there in America, that when they see these these numbers. You see the early numbers, and you see, Republicans ahead, and then more numbers come in. Then you see the Democrats take them and maybe win the race, and people are like, "Oh, there must be some fraud there," things like this. But election vote totals do not come in evenly across the state, and every state tends to have, particularly, like look at Maryland. Maryland has its conservative pockets, and we've got our liberal pockets.
Yep.
You look at Neil Parrott. Neil Parrott, the smaller areas, they report that he looks good. Montgomery County, had not reported fully, when Neil was ahead. We love Neil; he's a great guy. But once the Montgomery County votes really started getting tabulated, it was all over.
Yeah, and he was actually still ahead until they started counting the mail-in vote, I think.
Yeah, right. I mean, right. And so once they did that, and particularly with Montgomery County, I think Trone was, he was in like the 70% range in Montgomery County.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, the thing that most irritated me, I saw people walk up on election day with their mail-in ballots and drop it in the drop box. I'm sorry, you're making the effort to come here. Go in, stand in line, go vote. You morons. Really?
And that was the point I was trying to make earlier about this whole thing. For mail-in ballot and for drop-off, is like the rules of early voting should apply, in the sense of there should be an earlier cutoff, and that you should not be able to, based on the problems that these states are having counting the ballots and giving us a real good idea. Here we are on Friday, and we still don't know what's going on here for the most part in a lot of areas of key races. If they had done something like that, we would probably be in a heck of a lot better shape. But yeah, but that's that point. If you're dropping your ballot in on election day, why? Then you should be forced to stand in line.
Yeah, and also here's something else. I went to vote on election day. I asked the woman, I go, "What's faster, the electronic machines or the paper?" She goes, "Oh, I don't know. I think the electronic's faster." I get there. I'm like, I'm going to have to wait. I felt like, really, you only have two machines in a polling center that's fairly large. I mean, for crying out loud, I remember the 2002 election, where Maryland had we had all the electronic touchscreen machines every place when they got, because of Florida, the dimple chads and voter intent. They got rid of the punch cards, which I thought was the best way of doing things. Frankly, the punch cards.
I love the punch cards. Sometimes it was hard to get them lined up correctly, or it was a little. They weren't really well. But I mean, that just reminded me of high school, dealing with in a
Scantrons.
Yeah, we had the little IBM machine, and it would take all the punt holes and drop them into a little box.
Yep. And there's a story, Pat Finati, because Pat Finati is actually a programmer from the old days. And she used to work for Wayne Computer. She was telling a story about somebody, because those punch cards, how you wrote programs, and you had them like in numbers and they were in sequence, right? She goes, somebody had been working on some program for a long time, and they tripped and all the punch cards fell out. And I'm like, wow. She goes, if it were me, I would have just started to cry. And I'm like, you're not wrong there, frankly, especially when in those days coding was a lot harder than it is today, frankly.
Yeah, and, I mean, we go far enough back. I'm a little older than you are, but we still go far enough back that we remember those things, and we know a little bit about the history of computers in this country.
Remember, the IADC had a punch card reader, IRA, the computer that would give Steve Trevor and Diana Prince, all the leads and where all the bad guys were. Every computer in there is like lighting up, and then it spit out a card. That computer had to spit out punch cards. So I mean, you think that you think Wonder Woman and Batman would have state of the art technology, but I guess that was state of the art for the time. And it's funny, the Batman series in the 1960s, Wonder Woman was the late 70s.
When you think about all that stuff, but that was the wonderment of that age, right? I mean, it's like, you think about, gee whiz, that was great. It's a lot like movies, right? I mean, really before George Lucas kind of really, just changed movies forever, with all the special effects.
Well,
all the other stuff, you're like, wow, that was at the time.
Well,
That
actually,
might be, that was
you
it.
know who was doing the best special effects up to that point was probably Toho Studios in Japan. The folks that brought us Godzilla. I
Not
mean,
again.
they had those they were what is it? Monster Zero. Yeah, Planet X aliens. They had those little flying saucers, and you had Mecha Godzilla. I mean, that was really good special. I mean, the Ten Commandments. I'm still wowed every time I see the parting of the Red Sea scene. You know, it's like
Yeah, the Ten Commandments. I mean,
they had some really good special
that
effects in
stands the
there.
test of time.
Yeah.
Some of those other alien movies and things like that with the with the flying saucers, you're like, okay, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's this one. I want to say it's yeah, actually it's a Godzilla where you can actually see. They put Mothra on a train track, so you can actually see the wheels of the train. There's a Korean movie called Young Gary that breathed fire, right? But you can see the gas jet in his mouth when they were showing when he's breathing fire. I'm like, huh, Young Gary has a gas jet in his mouth. Uh, and the special effects, you know, it's like, you know, honestly, probably the Ten Commandments is probably one of the best special effects that have stood the test of time. I mean, Green Slime. I don't know if you ever saw Green Slime, Don. They used to rerun that on Channel 5 before it was a Fox affiliate, before Fox was even around, like on Saturdays, before many years ago. And
I guess I must have missed that one.
yeah, it was actually that was a collaboration between Toho and Rankin Bass.
Rankin Bass had a lot of shows back in the day.
Yeah, they also did the King Kong cartoon, and they were actually the ones that were. That's why Dr. Claw was in the Japanese King Kong version where he fought Mecha Kong, where you know Mecha Godzilla had missiles and lasers. Mecha Kong had high beam headlights. Like when you fight King Kong, he'd like flash his high beams, and King Kong would look away. You know, but yeah, that was the extent. But that was a Rankin Bass Toho collaboration.
So I'm gonna assume Craig, who just posted this link, is maybe talking about the vote totals, which were more Republicans took in votes than Democrats.
Yeah.
But it's
I mean, here's the thing. It was not a horrible night.
no, I mean,
It was not a
but the total number of votes is basically
yeah.
irrelevant
Hmm.
when you have house races, right? I mean, you have to have the right numbers in those
Yeah.
districts, otherwise it doesn't work.
But
Right.
here's it. Look, New York has picked up congressional seats. It's like when we picked up congressional seats in California 2 years ago, and we still held those. We've held those California seats this time around. You know, the Hudson Valley is now red. You know, it hasn't been red in a very long time. And I love the Civil War coming out there where the DCCC chair is now blaming AOC.
Yeah, so
Um,
I mean, there are good things about it. I mean, I mean, I was hoping the Republicans would get to 230 and build a
yeah,
comfortable margin.
yeah,
If they get to 220, or 222, which is still possible, at least they control the House. They just have a slim margin, and
yeah,
it'll be very important to keep the coalition together.
yeah,
Which is highly likely.
yeah,
That they will. I don't think the Democrats really pick off anybody for any particular vote,
yeah.
especially after the last couple of
And
years.
here's the good thing is us having the majority, we control the committee chairs.
Right. Well, I mean,
And
it's the end of the January 6th committee, right?
yes, yep.
And hello, Hunter Biden, laptop committee.
Yeah, and by the way, you know, we had Scott English on our sister show Direct Line on Wednesday, and he made a really good point. In 1994, Republicans were running, they were talking about, we're going to do welfare reform, we're going to have the crime bill, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Okay, and then quietly they were saying, we're going to investigate Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, right? While this time, we were saying, hey, we're going to investigate Hunter Biden, we're going to go after Mayorkas, you know, we're going to go after, you know. And I think if we had talked a little bit more about policy stuff and quietly did what we want to do after we take power, I think some of those close seats we would have won. And I want to say the Senate really did not have, you know, like they did. I don't know if they didn't participate in the Commitment for America, so to speak. I think,
Yeah.
what they should have done. I mean, the Senate, it's like, and then and Mitch McConnell, didn't help massively. Oh, it's the quality of. We've got a problem with quality of candidates. Mitch, shut up. Honest to God, it's like thank you for giving us a Republican majority in the Supreme Court, but just shut up. I mean, I think it's funny that the Pennsylvania, by the way, I think if early voting did not start in September, and that's another thing, if you're going to have early voting in September, no mail-in votes. If you cannot find time between September and November to go vote, maybe you don't want to vote that badly. Maybe
Yeah, I
you
mean
just don't.
that's the other problem with early voting, though, is that sometimes it starts way too early. People are casting ballots, without having knowledge of things that break late in the campaign.
And let me tell
Now,
you, Maryland, as bad as things are, we actually we had. I want to say I think it was about 2 days too long, but it's good enough. We had early voting for 7 days, I think. Yeah, 7 days roughly, and it's not great, but I'd rather have it for 7 days than 2 months. I mean, Virginia has early voting starting in late September. Pennsylvania, and I'm sorry, it's like and these debates are all at the whim of the candidates. It's not like that's one thing I think Republicans need to understand is that the Democrats aren't going to debate. They're not going to debate if they're in the lead. Just like I'd say, frankly, if Republicans are in the lead, why do you want to debate a Democrat and risk making a mistake? Frankly,
well, I mean, I think there's some debates are worthwhile. I mean, if you've got a strong candidate, a Republican candidate, the chances are that they'll probably do just fine. But when
absolutely,
you
yeah. I mean, but what I'm saying is that
but
if
we have a lot of unpolished candidates, and throwing them up in
yes.
a debate gets to be a little bit risky. I mean, it'd be like
Well, I think Republicans, if they're the challengers, I like debates. But I think if we're the incumbent, we really don't need to debate if we don't have to. Frankly, it's like
well, and I think the Democrats feel the same way. If I'm the incumbent,
exactly.
I don't feel like I have to
Except we
debate.
feel this obligation to debate. Incumbents. They want to debate. Like Larry Hogan had debates with Ben Jellison. He didn't need to debate those guys 4 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, but you go back to McConnell. I mean, McConnell is definitely. I mean, he gets vilified by conservatives a lot of times. I mean, and yet, but
But Don, we're old enough to remember when Mitch
well,
McConnell was a hero of the right.
he's a great politician. I'd say. I mean, I don't like Nancy Pelosi, but she's good at what she does in
Yeah.
counting votes. I mean, you have to have. There's skill sets involved that make them successful in their own right, whether or not we like them or not. McConnell, at least, he was pumping money into these races.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump wasn't pumping money.
No, not if you listen to Mark Levin. Mark Levin was really angry. Like, evidently he pulled money out of Alaska on that Senate race there. And
The Alaska deserves everything it gets. The Republicans went ahead and allowed. They went ahead and installed the ranked choice voting.
yep.
Ranked choice voting sucks. It's a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a
Yep.
Republican and you actually implement that, you're a fool. You're an idiot.
Exactly. Shame on you.
It's created a mess. It's given them a Democrat congresswoman as a result.
Yep.
That type of thing. It opened the doors to Democrats, which is exactly what the Democrats want. Now, I don't know, like in Alaska, if Shabaka is going to win. I hope she wins because I'd like to see Murkowski go. We know the seat's going to be an R seat. We just don't know if it's Murkowski or Shabaka. But we want Murkowski out because she is an unreliable vote for the Republicans.
Yes. Especially if we get it to 51 in the Senate.
But it's going to be it's going to be a tough road. I mean,
I think Laxalt
Nevada, Laxalt, he still could hang on there. I mean, they're getting close, right? They're getting close, and the vote total is getting close to 90% the last time I looked.
Yep.
Arizona, Mark Kelly's going to win that race. Blake Masters is trailing too far, I think, and he's underperforming Carrie Lake.
Carrie Lake may become the governor of Arizona.
I think she can pull that out. I don't think there's enough there for Masters to pull it out. Look at Georgia. Herschel Walker underperformed. Kemp while Warnock outperformed, Stacey Abrams. If
Mhm.
if if Walker could have had, you know, just about only about a 5% drop off from Kemp, he would have
Mhm.
won that race outright. But
Yep.
he trailed by a little bit more than that, and as a result, and this is what we were, this has been an interesting thing there because even in Nevada, I mean, Laxalt, I think he's got a very tight margin in there, but the governor, this guy Lombardo, is beating the Democrat incumbent governor by a much wider margin. So
Yep.
we are seeing kind of this divergence where the Republican Senate candidate and the Republican gubernatorial candidate are not necessarily in lockstep vote
Yep.
wise. So
Hmm.
we definitely have seen some drift there, which is a little bit disconcerting at some point in time. But there's some Democrats have been tough in some races.
Hmm.
Lauren Boebert, I mean, she looks like she's going to eke that one out, but that was not supposed to be a close race. Uh,
No, that should not. Yeah.
Republicans did not do a very good job, and it goes back to what you were saying about in terms of talking about some of the things that they said. Ted Cruz, I think you and Ted Cruz are probably somewhere on the same wavelength because Ted Cruz had said that there are too many candidates spent too much time on kind of the personal issue and
Yep.
not on what we're going to do in the policy
Yeah.
issue, and I think that cost them dearly.
And
I mean, and
yeah.
I think even if Carrie Lake pulls this off, Carrie Lake would have been a stronger candidate had she stuck to more issues and made this more personal. I mean,
I
she
mean,
attacked
look at
Neil.
Maryland. Nicolay Ambrose, Neil Parrott, Europe C. Morgan, all stuck to kitchen table issues. As a result, Nicolay got about 46%. Uripsy also got about 46%. And they've done this is phenomenally great for Republicans, those two districts. And Neil pretty much came real close to real close to winning. If we didn't have this mail-in thing and we just voted on election day, I think Neil would have won, frankly. Um, and they all focused on kitchen table inflation, crime. You know, let's not get lost. That's why, like when like I was running for county council, and a lot of people say, "Why aren't you speaking out about?" I'm like, look, you gotta be for something. You can't just be against something. You gotta be for something. That's why I said I'm for STEM education. I'm for expanding the math and sciences in our schools. I think we need to beef up requirements for high school graduation, frankly, and bring back the final exams in Montgomery County Public Schools. I'm not gonna, we all know CRT is bad, okay, but the way you defeat CRT, you can't just be against it. You also, yes, we're against CRT, but we're also for STEM education. You can't you can't just beat the drum of what you're against. You got to also talk about what you're for, and that's it. I think a lot of candidates, a lot of candidates in Maryland did a brilliant job. We were against inflation. We were against high price of gas. We were for STEM education. We weren't beating that drum about CRT, CRT, CRT. Because our voters know it. We're not gonna. We don't support CRT. We don't support the perversion that is being taught in MCPS schools. And we need to say what we're against, but we also need to say what we're for, and that's the big
Right,
kind of loss.
right.
A
And
lot of
I'm going to say too. The other thing, you talked about the performance of,
yeah,
Neil Nicolay, Uripsy. The one of the striking things too is the fact that how much they outperformed Dan Cox,
yes,
right?
yeah,
If Dan Cox had been if we'd had a better candidate, a
hmm,
stronger candidate at the top of the ticket, that might have been enough to push the rest of those guys. If those candidates can get in that mid 40 range with Cox
hmm,
as the top of the ticket,
yep,
you can only imagine, if
and
I'm not even saying that Kelly would have necessarily won, but she would have been a stronger candidate. She could have possibly, pull say she would have done 5 to 7 points better than Cox.
yeah,
That she could have potentially pulled, taken
Neil
Uripsy
over the finish line,
and
yeah,
Neil over the finish line. Definitely Neil.
yeah,
You know,
and
uh,
I think she probably could have taken Nickel and Uripsy along too. I
yeah.
think,
I mean, I think that was a possibility. I mean,
and
it's just
here's the thing: I can't put all the blame on our current, basically our candidate, our nominee for governor. But I'll say Larry Hogan has some responsibilities in this too. Larry Hogan talked down Republicans. You know, he, yes, he did a fundraiser for Nicolay. Yes, he did a fundraiser for. I think he did a fundraiser for Neil. I'm not sure if he did or not. But so Governor, you needed to get in there, and this is your legacy. If I recall, in 2014, there were 4 Republicans running for governor, and they all got behind you after you won the primary. And they didn't go around saying, "Oh well, we're not going to support Larry. Larry has no chance of winning." We all got behind our party's nominee, and I think that is it's a shame.
Yeah, I mean,
Was
I agree with that. I mean,
I mean, Dan Cox was not my first choice.
No, I mean, I voted for Cox, but it wasn't
Yeah.
something I really wanted to do. I mean, but
Yeah, I mean,
hey,
it's like I voted for John McCain too. He wasn't my
yeah,
first
right.
choice either.
He was the nominee, so I will faithfully vote for for that
Yeah.
nominee. But yeah, I mean, I kind of understand where the governor, because of Cox's close alignment to Trump, and
Yeah.
there's definitely some bad blood between Cox and Hogan, and so there's
Yes.
some personal issues.
Well, I mean, when
going
you say you're going to arrest the governor, that kind of leaves it.
yeah. No, I mean, so you have that, but on the other hand, are you really interested in trying to make the Republican Party and keep it strong in Maryland, try to
Yeah.
build? Then you must get behind the candidate no matter what.
I tell you,
I mean, what is Hogan? I mean, really, what does Hogan have to lose at this point? He's not on the ballot anywhere, and it doesn't seem to be that, except for maybe running for president, down the line. That's what he'd want to do. But Maryland wise, I mean, he doesn't look like he was going to run for Senate. So go ahead and do this. Go ahead and support the candidate and give him try to help him get over the finish line a little bit, or at least turn out more voters. I think
who the biggest winner in Maryland politics is after this cycle? The biggest winner is Governor Bob Ehrlich. Governor Bob Ehrlich did what our sitting governor should have done. Bob Ehrlich, governor, went around, you asked him for a fundraiser, he made it happen. He did a fundraiser for everyone. He did one for Europe. He did one for Reed. He did one for, he did 2 for me. I got a 2 for out of that. He did a fundraiser for all candidates all over the state. He did one for Chris Palumbi. He did, events, it's like, but he's only one person. It's like he can't do every candidate running, but he did a fundraiser for every candidate that asked him.
Right, and in general, even though there are a lot of conservatives that are, that have not been happy with Hogan for various reasons, he's still the sitting governor. He still would turn out people, and he could still help you raise significant amounts of money that can be used. So yes, Larry Hogan definitely deserves some criticism for the way he played. If
Governor Hogan had gotten on the phone to his donor and say, "Hey, I need you to give money to Neil, Uripsy, and Nicolay," to the tune, so they helped them raise each $1 million extra a piece. That would have been enough to pull them over. I think $1 million, $3 million would have been enough to pull those 3 candidates over the finish line.
Yeah, and it's not like the situation the Democrats had with Joe Biden. Not that many candidates really wanted Joe Biden around because Biden's poll numbers were low. Hogan's poll numbers are good. Those candidates would have loved to have Governor Hogan, help them raise money. There's,
absolutely. He did do a fundraiser for Uripsy. He did do a fundraiser for Nicolay.
But he wasn't as visible. You have a Republican governor who should have been far more visible in this campaign than he was.
I mean, we had Governor Ehrlich walking the streets of the 2nd District with Nicolay Ambrose. You don't think if Larry Hogan had done the same thing, that would have given her a little bit of a bump, frankly, in addition to the bump that Governor Ehrlich gave her? It's just very, very disappointing. I mean, we're all Hogan people.
Yeah.
We all were we were all with Larry Hogan in 2014. Some of us were with Larry Hogan from 2012, frankly.
You helped arrange an interview with Hogan with me that I was able to do. One of the first ones he did. It was like, we were all in, very early in, with Hogan. Overall for his 8 years, I think he did about as good a job as he could overall because dealing with a heavily Democrat legislature, you knew you weren't going to get legislation passed, but you could throw up some vetoes and make them override them.
Yep.
You can do a few things by executive order that, to do things. I mean, at least he kind of helped, did a little bit of blocking and tackling of some
Yep.
of the worst things, during this time. And I think
Yeah.
Maryland thrived with that.
And what's going
Is
to happen now?
Wes Moore going to be a great governor? I don't think so, but
No, he's not. He's going to, let me tell you, first thing that's going to happen, all the tolls are going to double. They're going to double. And what they're going to say is, well, we haven't had a toll increase in 8 years, And they'll go, people are making more money now than they were 8 years ago. So let's just take it out of their pocket. They don't need that extra money. Taxes are going to go up. We haven't had a tax increase in 8 years. Well, it's about time we raise the taxes. And, so they're going to raise the gas tax too. That's just how insidious these people are.
well, I mean, my advice to Governor-elect Moore is to look to California and see what happens when you get a little bit overzealous with your legislation, your taxes, and your regulation. Is that you start losing population,
Yeah.
and you then erode your tax base, and then your state starts getting some Republicans elected as a result.
Yeah.
You know,
And
so
here's another piece of advice for Governor-elect Wes Moore. Take a look at the William Donald Schaefer playbook.
yeah.
Take a look at how Harry Hughes governed. Or take a look how Marvin Mandel governed. Try to be like William Donald Schaefer, Harry Hughes, and Marvin Mandel. Don't try to be like Paris Glendening and Martin O'Malley. And you'll be a successful governor.
William Donald Schaefer may have been he was probably the most colorful governor
Yes.
that we had during my lifetime. He's
More colorful than Spiro Agnew?
he was just somebody fun to watch. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be interesting if Schaefer had governed during the era of Facebook and Twitter and social media.
Oh,
that would have been something. There's a lot of stuff.
You think Donald Trump had President Trump had issues with Twitter and Facebook?
Yeah, can you imagine William Donald Schaefer on Twitter?
William Donald Schaefer would call up radio stations when people would say bad things about him. That's how we got that infamous "The Eastern Shores of Odd House," the Odd House for the state of Maryland comment. Because somebody from the shore complained, and.
Yeah, so we've had. I mean, it's our history in Maryland, the politics of America is replete with interesting characters, and you just kind of wonder with people like that had social media been around in their time, how much different things would have been for them.
I know.
But that this is it. Technology marches on. You have all these things that go on, and you have to deal with whatever you're given at hand. But like I said at the beginning, I mean, here we are on Friday. I mean, it was Tuesday was election day.
Yes.
And we don't, you and I do not know really when we're going to know the final results. I mean, the California results are going to determine whether or not the Republicans really do gain control of the House.
Yeah.
Because they got to wait for all those stinking votes to be counted. And I think that is just a stain on America that we can't do this. And you mentioned these other countries. I mean, I think we have, we are the best country in the world. We have the best system in the world overall, right, of doing things.
Yeah.
And yet we can't get our votes counted, here within a few days. And you can look at other countries, and within a day or two, these third world countries, they know who their leaders are, and they move on from there. So this is just a ridiculous notion where we're stuck with right now.
And here's the kind of like I mean, let's take a country, India. They don't have the infrastructure we do here. They have a whole lot more people there than we have here. They managed to count the ballots for their I think they've got a parliamentary election. They got an election coming up this year or next year. I don't know when, but they count the votes. And within I think they vote for 3 days. And it's like part of the country votes on one day, other part of the country votes another day, and another part of the country. So they broke up the country in thirds. That's fine, And granted, I really wish they release the results as they're coming in, but they don't. Uh, but at the end of the third day, they know who the party in power in the parliament. The British Empire. They have parliamentary elections. We know the night of elections if Labour or Conservative is going to win the majority.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I'm betting in India being as vast as a country as it
yeah.
is, and so that there's not a lot of electronic voting going on in India. You just
No,
don't have
actually they require ID, and not only that, how when we had the
shocking.
election, and we had the elections in Iraq where they had to dip their finger in ink. They
Yeah.
do that too. You know, okay, if we don't have voter ID, can we do that at least? Can we at least have people dip their fingers in ink like we did in Iraq? I mean, honestly, that the election we had in Iraq under President George W. Bush was more legitimate than our 2020 election. Or, I mean, I don't want to say that, not more legitimate, but people had more faith in that Iraq election results than they did with the 2020 results, frankly. Uh, and it's a game. You got to adapt. It's kind of like Captain Picard said. We can adapt too. The Borg was adapting to everything, and Captain Picard said we can adapt too. And we, as Republicans, need to adapt to this new mail-in voting nonsense. We adapted to early voting. Uh, we've adapt. We need to adapt. We can't just throw our hands up there. Oh, we hate this mail-in voting thing. We're gonna have to. Unfortunately, in Maryland, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere
Well,
unless
I
we
mean,
have an
right.
election.
All of these things that have been put into play, you're not going to take them away. You're not. You can adjust things. I
Yeah,
mean, and look at Georgia. I mean, Georgia has been. Stacey Abrams has been making this point for years about
but I
voter
heard she
suppression and
conceded. Did she concede?
yeah,
Did
she
she concede
conceded this
for
time.
for
But
this time, or was it for the
yeah,
last time?
I still don't think she ever conceded for 2018.
No, I know, but was she conceded? She conceded for 2022, not 2018, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because she could have said, "I concede the 2018 election, but I'm not
I
going
mean,
to concede this."
I think she should have said, "I am now conceding both races."
That's what she should have said. Yeah, and what's funny is,
I
you
mean,
know,
even Georgia has, Georgia did a pretty good job. You had
yeah,
an idea, it didn't take them terribly. They had a lot of votes being cast, and it's just that their system requires 50%, to actually win it outright.
I
Otherwise,
don't like those rules. I don't like the jungle primary they have in California. I don't like, you know, Louisiana has that same thing. You got to have a majority, not a plurality. I think Although I am happy that they have that rule this time because then Herschel Walker has another bite at the apple, so to speak. It's going into a runoff, and I
but he's
tell
going to
you,
have a hard time. I mean, I think Walker. Even though he underperformed Kemp, I think he benefited by having Kemp on the ballot. Right
yes.
now, it's just Warnock versus
Can we put
Walker.
a reliever in? Can we take him out like in a baseball game? Put a reliever in.
Yeah, yeah, right. So that's going to be a tougher
Sonny
run
Purdue start warming up in the
because
bullpen.
Warnock probably already has a better infrastructure to get out the vote than Walker. We're going to be crossing our fingers, but depending upon how Nevada turns out, the Walker race may be, this Walker Warnock race may be, just not, more irrelevant. The Republicans have got to take Nevada. Arizona's probably already lost to to
Mm-hmm.
Kelly. So, we're going to be is that race, the Georgia race will then determine control of the Senate. Um,
Yep.
and I was thinking too about this is that if the Democrats somehow wound up with 51, what does Kamala Harris do now? Because that was the one thing she was halfway competent on was coming in
Maybe
and
she can go to the border.
a tie-breaking vote.
She can go to the border,
Actually, yeah, maybe
or
she
she
should
go to on the
resign.
border restaurant. Either or, she go to the on the border restaurant. She might go there too.
Yeah,
Are they still around, or are they out of business?
there may still be some. I think you can still buy their chips.
Yes, they're still around in like Florida. There's a few restaurant on the border places there. Don Pablo's is gone, I think.
So I like that restaurant. I've eaten at a few of those.
Remember we once drove to Laurel to Don Pablo's back in the old AIM days when I think it was you, Matt, myself, and someone else. I'm trying to think who else it was. I think it was
Yeah,
Kevin.
we had some eating excursions back in the day.
Yes, we did. Those are a lot. Those are the good old days.
But you mentioned that jungle primary. California, you can thank Arnold Schwarzenegger for getting that
Yes,
through, right?
and Californians we could have elected Tom McClintock governor or Bill Simon, but no, people like Sean Hannity. Oh, well, I'm going to tell these people, I'm going to endorse them and tell everyone, not to vote for. Sean Hannity, you claim to be a conservative, but yet you supported the most liberal. And that was the year McClintock or Simon could have beaten uh, Bustamante, Mr. Aslan movement. You know,
Yeah. So I mean, this is the problem. A lot of the problems that we've seen in some of these areas, in terms of making a bad situation worse, it's thanks to the Republicans that have actually been behind these things that are going to make it worse for them in the long run. It's
mm-hmm.
absolutely insane that this. I mean, if Schwarzenegger hadn't backed this thing, it probably wouldn't have happened for a while. I mean, the Democrats didn't have enough votes to get it passed in California
Mm-hmm.
at the time. But no, thank you, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Here's the legacy of some of these people that were like, why? But yeah, it's and you mentioned earlier too. I mean, you know, one of my problems with all of this too is that there was too much hype, I think, by the media and by other
Mm-hmm.
pundits about a red wave. And I do think there's a certain element in there where they really did this so that if it turned out that it was below what the
Yeah.
expectations that they built up, they could come back and criticize the Republicans for not
Yep.
getting to where they were. And that's pretty much exactly where we are right now.
And by the way, Don, this is the second time this has happened to us. Do you remember the Bill Clinton recorded testimony? There are all these leaks about Bill Clinton getting mad and walking off, which never happened. And they're saying all these things that happened that never happened. It was the Washington Post. It's like it's like and I want to say they did this to us in 2012. We were supposed to win. Mitt Romney was supposed to win. You know,
I
and
mean, yeah, I mean,
how that movie ended.
The Republicans, if they're at 220, they did underperform. I mean, there are races they lost. They should have won. They should have done a little bit better. But once again, as we spoke about at the beginning, you talked about New York and Florida were bright and shining stars in there, saying that particularly in New York. I mean, when you can come in there and you can start changing things in New York, and I think we can give Lee Zeldin a lot of
he
credit.
had coattails.
Yes,
Lee Zeldin.
He didn't.
Long
He didn't
Island
win,
is bright red.
but he helped. He had a strong campaign, the strongest Republican campaign in decades in New York
Since
for governor.
George Pataki.
Yeah, and as a result, Republicans did much better. So that was a good thing. I love how Biden. I mean, their silver lining is that they kind of held, and it was the best showing by a Democrat president in a midterm in decades.
Well, since George W. Bush.
Well, by a Democrat president though, in terms of a
yeah,
law.
okay, yeah.
That's what he was saying. So if it actually winds up, if the Republicans actually take the House, which they should, I still find it funny that your defense of this whole thing is that we didn't lose as many seats as everybody thought we did. Okay?
Well, it's kind of like like when the Redskins lose and when they don't cover this, when they cover the spread, they still lose. But hey, if you had the extra points, and if you took us with 7 points, you would have won the game. That's kind of like what it is. And one last thing I think before we get to final thoughts, I want to bring up is today's Veterans Day. Presidents usually go and lay wreaths at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier or veterans. Where's Joe Biden? He's in Egypt. He could not delay his trip by a day to go to Egypt. Does he really have to go to that climate summit in Egypt? Could he not? Could he not have gone out to the Tomb of the Unknown early this morning before he went to Egypt? Of course he could have. But no, he doesn't care about veterans. Joe Biden is just a horrible, horrible president, frankly.
Yeah, climate above the vets. I mean, this is an important day for Americans, and then he's somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. the optics of this once again are not good. But again, this is the tone deaf nature of the Biden administration
Hmm.
that we see about this. Is that
Yep.
important things get left behind as a result. They really don't know what they're doing. Um,
Hmm.
it continues to show. I mean, Biden said he's going to make a decision, or at least will announce, what his plans are for 2024. I guess fairly soon. We're waiting on the news from Trump, I guess, on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think Trump's gonna. I mean, if he even gives a hint of running in 2024, you've got people. I mean, look, Winsome Sears says she supported him and did things. She's not going to support him.
Ron
There are a lot
DeSantis.
there are a lot of prominent Republicans that are not going to support Trump going
Yeah.
forward. And based on how a lot of heavily Trump supported candidates did on this cycle, I think that it would be a huge mistake for Trump to run at this point. Raise money, give support to Republicans. Let's get off your ego trip train here, Trump, and then make it about the Republicans, and then
Oh,
let
but
them.
it's always about him. It's never about the party. It's him before party.
from
Honest
day,
to God.
from day one, it's always been about Donald
By the way,
Trump.
some of the comments. I was a supporter of President Trump. I was a Trump delegate twice. And let me tell you something. He made that. I heard today. He made a comment saying Glenn Youngkin's name sounds Chinese. I mean, are you kidding me here? He's attacking Ron DeSantis, America's governor.
Ron DeSanctimonious, right?
Yes, and you had nothing to do with creating Ron DeSantis, Mr. President.
Yeah, and yet he wants to take credit for some of the stuff in Florida,
Yeah,
right? And he didn't do
yeah,
diddly squat.
yeah.
So I think Trump has been exposed here on a lot of fronts, and just like you said,
And
look,
look,
I
let's
voted
look at
for
his
Trump
with the
twice.
exception of J.D. Vance. Let's look at his endorsed candidates. How'd they work out? Dr.
Yeah,
Oz went down. Dan Cox went down. The guy that was running for governor in Pennsylvania went down. We had the guy in New Hampshire went down. You know, his pick for Senate in Georgia might go down. And oh wait, Vice President Pence and President Bush were with Governor Kemp, and we already know he won. We don't have to wait for a runoff for that one.
yeah.
It's like and then you got these people. Oh, you neocons don't know what you're doing, and the era of Reagan is over. And my favorite line that kind of irritates the hell out of me is when they go, "Oh, President Trump was more successful than Ronald Reagan." I'm like, President Reagan got 2 terms. He got 2 terms in the White House. You know,
And I was thinking today. So I subscribe to the Reagan Library podcast. So
yeah,
once a week they spit out something, and usually it's a couple. It's they have kind of a theme, and then they cobble together some of the speeches or whatever. The one that
hmm,
just came out this week was a Tom Brokaw interview with Reagan. Um, I guess it would have been like 1980. I guess it was in 88, 88,
yeah,
89, whatever. So he was no, he was leaving office or whatever. It was a great interview.
yep,
But one of the thoughts I had as I listened to this short interview was just that, to me, I think that Reagan also, I think to me, in my mind, he was probably the last president that left office yet having some respect and admiration from both sides. You know,
hmm,
I I don't think the Bushes left office that way. The Clinton, Obama, Trump, none of these guys, Carter, none of these
yep,
guys left office with a general respect even from the other side. You may not have thought, oh no, Democrats like Reagan, but he was hard not to like.
hmm,
And Trump is a guy that's easy to hate, mean tweets and the whole nine
yep,
yards, and all this attacks. I mean, Ronald Reagan. What's the 11th commandment? Thou shalt not speak ill of
exactly.
the
Thou
Republican.
not speak ill of another Republican.
Yeah, he. I mean, Trump violates this thing like every 5 minutes. It seems sometimes.
Yeah, as do a certain governor we all know and love.
Yeah, I mean, and it's much more widespread than it used to be, but Trump has taken it to an extreme, and it really bugs the heck out of me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like really, really disappointing, frankly. President Trump had great policies. We had the border sealed. We weren't having all these illegals coming over. We didn't have, the Russians never would have invaded Ukraine under President Trump. None of that stuff would have happened under President Trump. But the problem is, President Trump is his own worst enemy. He can't seem to get out of his own way.
That's exactly right.
You
Yeah,
know,
look. I mean, I felt from the time that when Trump lost in 2020, the best thing for him to do at that point in time, if he was really a Republican, was
yeah,
that he would then turn himself into, kind of rehabbing any reputational issues he had
yeah,
for the fact that he couldn't get out of his own way, and become a supporter of other Republican candidates, and just work. Go ahead and beat the Democrats to a pulp. Support these Republican candidates. Don't get into all these stupid fights, and don't make it about yourself. And go
yeah.
do. And he could have done party building. He could have raised a ton of money
He could have done
nationwide.
Richard Nixon 1964
Yeah,
in
sure.
1966,
Yeah,
where he went around and raised money and got so many between 62 and 66. Vice President Nixon then, after he lost the governor's race in California, 66 he did 64, 66 he did everything he could to get Republicans elected all around the country. And what happened to him in 1968? He became president, and he became a two-term president. By the way, last night the Nixon Foundation had the Nixon dinner.
is that right?
Yeah.
Was that the one? Was that the one where Gingrich was at?
Yes. And
So
something.
no, I was going to say the thing too is that Nixon.
Yeah, the Agnew Society's working on the Agnew Foundation dinner.
Yeah. And even though Nixon had to leave office, the thing was is that by the time he died, I think he was in general considered one of the elder statesmen of the Republican Party.
Yes.
He repaired his reputation with a lot of things that he had done post presidency. Trump could also be thought of as an elder statesman if he had tried to do this.
Yep.
It would have been a great way to burnish his reputation, and to remind people that his policies largely succeeded, right? And take the focus off of himself and his personality flaws,
Mm-hmm.
and focus on the policy issues. Because as much as I had issues with Trump and his personality, and you alluded, King couldn't. It was his own worst enemy. The policies he put into place were good for the country overall.
Yes, they were.
And he could have harped on that. He could have helped candidates with those types of things. But all this other stuff, all the nonsense around January 6th, it's like, can you not just leave office gracefully?
It's the Hollywoodification. And this all goes back to. I mean, President Bush left office. I mean, I think he did a hell of a job for 8 years, considering the hand he was dealt. And by the way, that's another thing. It's like it's like he was dealt. I mean, he had the Twin Towers go down because of the Clinton's neutering of the CIA and our intelligence system. So we had no idea it was coming. And we came back from that. We had a success. I mean, by the time he left, Afghanistan was under control, frankly. By the time he left, Iraq was stable. It was Barack Obama that destabilized Iraq and Afghanistan. And then when it got stable again, and when we got it stable again under President Trump, Joe Biden screwed that one up.
Right.
No, Thank God Iraq is still stable.
Yeah, I mean, I think W was the right president for our time. I mean, he was great, just like Rudy Giuliani was right for New York at that time, yes. Right? I mean, we had those guys who were great unifiers that kept us together. We went through New York City, the whole country went through some terrible times, and we got through that. It's hard to imagine anyone else, really having done the job that he did. That had to be one of the hardest things in the world, is to go through that event. And he did that with grace and dignity, and really kept us together. But yeah, it's just amazing to see. Trump has so many opportunities, and here's all these things that are going on worldwide, right? You mentioned Afghanistan, but look what we have Ukraine, the situation in Ukraine. I think this is a result of Biden.
Yes,
Trump. Yeah,
President Trump. They never would have
Trump
invaded
kept
Ukraine.
Putin at bay. Trump kept he's kept North Korea at bay. Now you've got all this. You've got North Korea firing more missiles and
You
playing.
got China
You got
saber.
China doing their thing. It's just so you've got all these things going on. The pot's being stirred there because you've got a president who doesn't have a clue as to how to handle these guys.
Yeah, he likes to wear those aviator glasses. And go down. Go to Egypt and go to these fancy events and all that. Because I remember when Obama got elected. I remember Chuck Todd on MSLSD because I was at the gym and they had MSLSD on. Chuck Todd goes, "We'll finally have a president that actually goes out to dinner." The Bushes never went out anywhere. It's like, I'm sorry, the president, he's, what do you call it? The president doesn't want to go out and eat. Maybe he likes a home cooked meal, frankly. Maybe Laura's a great cook and he doesn't want to go to a restaurant. Maybe Michelle's a horrible cook. That's why Barack Obama loved going out to eat.
Well,
Hillary was a bad cook.
The White House has, they have a chef, right? They have a whole.
Yeah, I know
chef,
they do. Yeah,
right?
they do.
So, you.
We don't know that. Laura could have decided. Laura could have insisted that I'm going to cook.
Too. But what's wrong with a president eating in? When if you've already got a personal chef kind of a thing like that, that whole argument is kind of specious. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, Bill Clinton, we know it was the company at dinner. He didn't want to be around. That's why he went to McDonald's.
All right, Dwight. Let's not let this show go on as long as we have in the past.
I know. Yes. Final thoughts time. Don, go.
Okay, a few things. So Biden's student loan program has taken another big hit. I'm not quite, maybe it'll hit the Supreme Court, but he's going to have a tough road though. They're confident that they can fight back on this, but I think these lawsuits and the courts are showing that, he acted unconstitutionally in trying to do this loan forgiveness. He used that as a political tool in the election, which really wasn't a big issue for most people. Inflation is a bigger issue. The pocketbook issues are a bigger issue than that by far. So, but once again, another failure, I think, on the Biden administration. They got this wrong. We see that Mayorkas, DHS secretary, he wants the head of the Customs and Border Patrol to resign, or he'll be fired if he doesn't. And the guy is resisting, and pinpointing, the blame on the border problem is on this guy. But I could have sworn that Kamala was supposed to be taking charge of that and trying to solve that problem, right?
She was told to be in charge of on the border restaurants. She's working on that comeback for fix the franchise problem with on the border.
That hasn't worked very well. Elon Musk,
that hasn't either worked.
Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter is an absolute disaster. It was more of a joke when he proposed doing it. He was forced to buy it and overpaid for it, and he's currently, it looks like he's running it into the ground with all these things. It's, I don't know. Elon,
maybe he'll shut down Twitter.
Elon is being Elon, but he may wind up taking a company he paid $44 billion for and wind up making it almost worthless if he keeps up at this rate. The left got advertisers to stop advertising, so they're cut off a lot of funding, and Elon is just doing strange odd things. So you and I could pay $8 and be verified, but I saw, I think it was on CNN, somebody set up a Jesus account, and is now verified because they paid $8. So it's a little bit, it's out of control. They suspended the verification as a result of just the overall abuse of the system.
Yeah, they also suspended what's her name, bloody head woman, Kathy Griffin.
Yeah, well, I will say I give Valerie Bertinelli credit. One of my teenage crushes, who was smart enough to realize that you could change your Twitter handle to Elon Musk, and then tweet out on his behalf, and got Kathy Griffin and a whole bunch of other liberals to do the same thing and push out a lot of Democrat election stuff before Elon, they could catch on, stop it.
And Valerie Bertinelli is still on Twitter.
and he got
and Kathy
he got
Griffin's been.
and stuff like that. So the Elon had no idea what the heck he was getting himself into with that. I mean, I like the idea that he was trying to liberate Twitter from some of the controls that they had, but
Yeah,
he did not really think this through at all. So I'm not really sure about the future of
see,
Twitter. Is a
I see
question mark.
Twitter as the low rent district. Frankly, it's
Well,
not. It's not
there's
quite.
this other service, what Mastodon? People have left for Mastodon.
Yeah, well,
So
yeah. I mean, it's like you got MySpace, which is the ghetto of the internet.
might as well go to Parlor or whatever, right? Or
Yeah, exactly. Or Gab.
yeah, which is
You
not
know,
what I'm never going to do. Is like if Twitter dies, so be it. I use it a few times during the week, but not a whole lot.
I mean, I don't think I was using Twitter a lot for my campaign in the beginning. Then it's like why bother? After the primaries were over, what do I need to? Because I did my job. I knocked Tom Hooker out in the primary.
So my final thing on this too is that because of Twitter, I got into a Twitter spat with a Maryland Republican who accused me of being a rhino and told me to go back and join the Democrat Party because I dared say that Dan Cox was not an electable candidate, and as soon as he was nominated, that sealed the deal for the Democrats to
Mm-hmm.
win. And she got mad at me for this, and I said, I mentioned that Republicans have got to take their blinders off when it comes to you cannot be a conservative candidate like Cox and win statewide in Maryland. You can win in the portions that are conservative, but you have to be the Hogan type. You got to do what Ehrlich did, which is govern more from the middle. That's the only way that you succeed in Maryland or can win in Maryland statewide as we are currently constituted because of the registration. And she is so dyed in the wool, hard right Trump Cox that she called me a rhino. So she may
I
be the
take it
first.
this person doesn't live in Maryland anymore.
She's the first person who's ever done that. So
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's funny. You worked for Accuracy Media. Your dad was Reed Irvine. You hung out with Morton Blackwell and Paul Wyrick and Ralph Reed, and they're calling you a rhino.
yeah, I don't remember anybody ever calling me a rhino before. So
It's like
I'll consider that my badge of honor. My last
they
comment
called
was,
us. They called us fascists.
yeah.
So,
The last tweet I had to her was like after she said that after a second, I said well then you do you, and she's like, what is that, some kind of rhino code? I was like,
yes, it is.
You really got a problem here.
Yes.
I don't know. Craig's got a good question. I have no idea. I mean, how did Boyd?
I don't know. He probably voted for Dan Cox.
Yeah.
It's like we all voted for Dan Cox. Because it's like Dan Cox was our only choice at the end of the day.
Yeah. Right.
When the primary is over, we support our nominees, frankly.
And look, and I mean, I think if you're going to be honest with yourselves too, the Republicans knew, I think, that with this election, from the time that Hogan won office initially, that if he won 2 terms, who was going to succeed him was going to be a question mark. I had no expectations that Rutherford was going to be the guy, and so
Maryland is very, very unkind to its lieutenant. We have not had a lieutenant governor become governor. PKT went down. Anthony Brown went down.
I like Boyd Rutherford, but he wasn't governor material to me.
Yeah, I mean, Harry Hughes's lieutenant governor, Mickey Steinberg, he didn't win. Maryland does not they don't reward lieutenant governors. They used to say the curse of the vice presidency, the vice president never gets to be president. And that's obviously been broken since Richard Nixon became president, George Bush became president.
Actually, Dwight, I'm glad that you said that because that calms me down a little bit more because that means that Aruna Miller, at least we probably won't see her as a future governor.
Yes,
thank
Aruna Miller. Yes.
That's the worst part of that ticket is I think she's far worse than Moore.
Yeah, if that's possible, it's kind of like Joe Biden and Camilla. Camilla's a lot worse than Joe.
So and that's the other thing too. When you look at 2024, what does Joe Biden do? Does he say, yes, I am running for reelection in 2024, and kind of lock up the Democrats with a guy who's in the 40% approval rating range, and has performed generally terrible. He can't, he struggles at free style
Mhm.
press conferences. He he's
Yeah.
he, he's showing signs that he's really
I think he's
losing
going to
it.
bring Fetterman on to be his debate coach
Yeah,
when he
right.
prepares in 2024.
And then or does he clear the path for Kamala, which I don't think anybody wants, right? If if Biden says that he's not going to run again, he puts the Democrats kind of in a lurch, because then they immediately will look to Harris, but no one wants
Yep.
Harris. She's shown to herself to be completely incompetent. So that creates a big problem for the Democrats, and then he would in essence be a lame duck president, for the last couple of years. So
Yep.
I think he has to say he's going to run,
Yep.
but it becomes a high risk for the Democrats because it locks
Maybe
them into
he'll do an
2024.
LBJ. When he gets his clock cleaned in New Hampshire, he'll decide, oh, I'm going to go back to Delaware. I need to hang
Yeah,
out with
well, I mean, that would
Trump.
be interesting, right? Yeah, that would actually be very interesting to see if he is the nominee in 2024, but then somebody decides to challenge him, or at least he says he's running, but he still has some
I think Gavin
challenges.
Newsom
Right,
would
Gavin
challenge him.
Newsom or somebody else comes up through there and tries to challenge him,
Maybe
and then
Stacey
he
Abrams.
he performs poorly.
Yeah.
Does he then bow out? Oh, it's Stacey Abrams. Please tell me that Stacey Abrams, Charlie Crist, Beto O'Rourke, please tell me that their political careers right now on a national scale are over. You know,
You
they
know,
they have lost too many elections now, I think, to be viable candidates. I mean, Chris is getting older anyway, but Beto, I mean, National Review had one of the best,
even Morgan and
things,
Morgan
but
money
I
couldn't
mean, I
help
think
Charlie
I think they
Crist.
posted that Beto has lost back to back to back races, and has spent like $174 million in the
Yeah.
process.
And you know what I think we might see? Do you remember Willie Kennedy Smith?
Oh yeah.
You know he's an ANC commissioner in DC now.
Oh, is he really?
Yes. It's like maybe Beto will move to DC and become he'll challenge William Kennedy Smith for the ANC. He'll challenge him for ANC commissioner.
Right. I think with these people, I think with Abrams and Beto, after losing these races, you almost need to rebuild your credibility and your electability by going back to the lower levels and seeing if you can't win somewhere locally, and start rebuilding yourself and saying, yes, I can win an election. I'm just
Mhm.
not going to go for the high profile stuff right away. Um, I
Run
mean,
for dog catcher or something like that. Yeah.
and particularly for Abrams, who was really close in 18 and got
Uh-huh.
blown out in 2022, right?
Yeah.
So when you go backwards by that much, you've got a problem. And her credibility in terms of voter suppression and stuff like that
Yeah.
doesn't pan out. No, she's the only one who was talking about it. Nobody else was talking about it in Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, let me tell you, Stacey Abrams is too far to the left. I mean, Zell Miller was a Democrat governor and a senator from the state of Georgia. He might be, and if you got to be like in the mold of Zell Miller to get elected in Georgia, or a Sam Nunn,
Right.
you can't run like Jesse Jackson in Georgia and expect to win. So.
Right. Right. All right. Back to you. We've talked.
Yes, my final thoughts. A couple things. One, very important. Thank you everyone who voted for me last Tuesday. We did very well. We came in fifth out of so we were about 100,000 votes short of but we can make it. The mail. I still have faith in the mail. But in all seriousness, but one thing I think that got a little overlooked was, congratulations, Jerry DeWolf in Washington County. You guys wiped out every single elected countywide Democrat in Washington County. There is no countywide elected Democrat in Washington County. Hooray! Congratulations, Washington County. You guys did a great job. And in 4 years, you'll be getting rid of all the other the commissioners that are Democrats and that person that beat Delegate Cham, frankly, by 30 votes. You know,
Oh, did he
and
lose?
yeah, by 30 votes. It's so heartbreaking
Oh man, bummer.
because it's all those bigoted Democrats in Hagerstown who won't vote for an African American woman. Oh, that's what the headline would have been if she were a Democrat and she lost. Just saying. You know. Um, and on another note, we have our Christmas party coming up December 4th in Kensington. Go to MontgomeryCountyRepublicClub.com to get all the details and RSVP. It's always fun. It's a free event. All we ask is you bring an unwrapped toy for a U.S. Marine Corps Toys for Tots or a $20 check to U.S. Marine Corps Toys for Tots campaign. It is going to be from 1:30 to 3:30, December 4th. Great event, a lot of fun. A lot of people are going to be stopping by. People from all over the state come by, so I welcome everyone across the state. Our newly elected delegates. Dr. Tomlinson is now delegate-elect. Dr. Tomlinson. He is now going to Annapolis, getting ready for
Oh,
the
good,
new session.
good for
Yeah,
him.
Dr.
All right.
Tomlinson. Yeah. I wonder if he'll still do our show from time to time.
Yeah, but
I mean,
Reed lost too, though, right?
yes, unfortunately, Reed lost. And that's the one I think we should have won that one. That's another one where I think if we,
So
whatever,
I didn't look at the results overall. So did the Republicans lose seats in the Senate and the House in Maryland then?
uh,
Net.
we may have just broken even, frankly, because I think we picked up some and lost some. I want to say I think Sid Saab lost his Senate seat. Yeah, he was running for the Ed Riley seat, which had been trending blue for a long time. And I think Sid Saab lost, but he may hold on. But Michael Huff, congratulations, I believe. It's safe to say you will be the next county executive for Frederick County. Please build a wall between Frederick County and Montgomery County. You might want to do that.
I don't know. Frederick's not all that conservative, right?
Not anymore. Not
Yeah.
anymore. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, our friend Alex Mooney became chairman of the party after he lost his race for Senate. And now he's a United States congressman. Not a bad trade.
Carpetbagger.
I know.
But
Hey,
yeah, at least he moved there and has stayed there, right? So
yeah, he moved there. Yeah.
his mother moved there too. Lala moved there. So hey,
Yep, Lala moved there too. Yeah, and I think Alex, may be the next senator from West Virginia, Senator Mooney. Because I believe Joe Manchin, and that's Joe. By the way, I think Joe Manchin should consider becoming a Republican. Frankly, especially if we take the majority in the Senate, it's no fun being in a minority. Just come over to our side. Richard Shelby came over when we took over the House, as did Senator Ben Nighthorse Campbell from Colorado.
at the Manchin should at least switch to the Republican Party
To save his own career.
yeah. Part of that too is just that it's his own fault, but he agreed to that last deal with the Biden administration, which they basically have lied to him about energy policy. So
Yeah, they're going to shut down coal.
yeah.
And no more drilling.
Yeah, Biden says that, and the administration tried to cover that up a little bit, right?
They walk everything back. It's like, I'm sure if Joe Biden said, like today we had rain, I could see Joe saying, oh, we're having a torrential downpour, and they'd have to walk that back because it wasn't really a torrential downpour. I can't wait to hear the gaffes he's going to have out in Egypt, And then he's going to Cambodia, and then he's going to Indonesia for the G20. And let me tell you, those are going to be some gaffes and gaffes and gaffes while he's out there. I wonder if he'll make a comment about samosas in Indonesia or something like that, The people who are unique as the samosas.
Yeah, I mean, it's his handlers better keep him under a very tight leash.
Yes. They really do need to. It is like a weekend at Bernie's with him. Maybe they need to put a little shock collar on so they can give him a shock every time he says something dumb, you know. But anyways, thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you guys next week. Good night. Have a good weekend. Happy Veterans Day. And we're almost at Thanksgiving. 2022 is almost over. Good night, everyone.
All right, good night, everyone.